Welcome to the Globetrottin ADs. This podcast is for you, athletic directors, activity coordinators, coaches, and program associates based in international schools around the world. The Globetrottin ADs is proudly hosted by Nick DeForest from the American International School Vienna and Matt Fleming from the American International School of Budapest. Here they are now, Nick and Matt and the Globetrottin ADs.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Globetrottin ADs. Our guest today is Dr. Greg Dale. He is a professor of sports psychology and sport ethics at Duke University, located in North Carolina, USA. He is also the director of the sports psychology and leadership programs for Duke Athletics. In addition to his work with Duke athletes and coaches, Greg also consults with numerous college and professional athletes teams, as well as high school teaching and coaching staff. So we're happy to have Greg. We're honored to have his insight here. So how you doing, Nick?
I'm great. Thanks, Matt. And Greg, thank you for being with us. It was great getting to know you. We talked not too long ago to set this all up after a great introduction from Kirby. So I want to say thanks to Kirby right off the start. Yeah. I know Matt read the standard bio, but maybe you could tell us a little bit more about yourself or just how you got into this field, at least.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I love that you guys are doing this and providing a great service for administrators and coaches around the world. So I love it. And so, I grew up in a small town in Texas. I spent my time in Texas and Alaska. That's where I spent my childhood, did several sports. I was going to be a teacher and a coach. And I went to grad school up in New York City, up at Columbia, and was doing educational administration and took a psychology of sport class. And what the heck is this? I've never even heard of this. And totally started investigating it and completely changed my trajectory and what I was doing. I really, obviously had a passion for sport, and the psychology of it really intrigued me. And I knew I wanted to work with coaches as well as athletes. So I had some experiences as an athlete, but I wanted to coach. And so I coached there in New York City for 6 years. And then I moved back to Texas, where I'm from, and taught and coached in San Antonio for a little while before I moved on to finish up my graduate program. And I've been at Duke now for 20 years and just have the best job. I get to work with athletes and coaches every day who are working to try to improve what they're doing. So it's great.
So I guess you kind of fell into it, right? I mean, obviously your love for coaching, like you said, and playing sports yourself, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I really, I look at it like I'm kind of coaching the coaches now, just like I'm still coaching athletes. I'm obviously not teaching the technical parts, but what I love about what I do is that I get to work with rowers. I get to work with football players, basketball players, tennis players, skiers, just kind of all across the board. And work with their coaches. So I've had to learn, the culture of fencing, for instance. I never knew what fencing was before I started working with fencers, but I really had to work and learn the challenges of doing that. And I like what I do because it's different every day. I'll meet with athletes in my office individually. I'll go meet with a team or a couple of teams in the afternoon, go to a practice or two, have lunch with a coach, or maybe have breakfast with the coaching staff. And then I also get to work with some coaches and athletes and outside of Duke, and Duke has been very good with that, and feel like it's good for the Duke brand. And when I do that, and so I've been very fortunate to spend some time outside of that as well.
And do you have a staff that works with you, or you have like undergrads or grad school?
No, it's just me. Now, recently we've hired 2 individuals recently in the athletic department to focus exclusively on mental health, just because we've really seen a rise in the challenges that kids are facing at the college level. Our kids struggle with adversity. They struggle with failure. They struggle making decisions on their own. Again, at Duke, for many of our athletes, for the first time in their lives, they're having to really face failure. Growing up, they were the best athletes, not only on their teams, but in their entire state, or certainly in their leagues or whatever. And many of them were the smartest kids or some of the smartest kids in their class. And you come to Duke and you're neither one of those now. Yeah, and so that's really a tough adjustment. And I spend a lot of time talking to parents I think it's us. We are the ones that kind of are screwing our kids up a little bit in terms of not letting them fail. And we have our hearts in the right place and our intentions are great, but what we do them an in service sometimes, or just justice and injustice, I should say, sometimes when we try to fix everything for them. So I really have a passion for trying to help parents because I see it with the athletes I work with in college.
Okay.
So a lot of work you spend a lot of time probably with those incoming freshmen when they're first coming in and getting adapted to independence and school life and college life, and then also playing a major level sport.
Yeah, no question. And it's a really big adjustment for them to, that cliche of going from being a big fish in a little pond to now you're a little fish in a really large ocean, so to speak. And it really is true. It's a real thing. And it's for the first time in your life, if you're having to deal with failure, and much of your identity is in who you are as an athlete. And now that has been kind of diminished in many ways. So we spend a lot of time focusing on how else can you impact this team? How else can you have an influence? If we take playing time out of the equation, if that's the only reason you do it, you're going to be miserable. And if that's the only way you get some positivity from it, then you're going to struggle. So we try to help them find different ways that they can have an impact.
That's great.
Yeah.
The way you described your job is exactly what I like about being an athletic director. You deal with parents, you deal with kids, different sports that you would have never played when you were young. You have to get to know all these different facets. It made me want to think about what were your sports when you were an athlete yourself.
Yeah. So back in the day, right? So growing up in Texas, obviously I played football, right? You got to play football if you're in Texas, and so I played football, ran track, played baseball. When we lived in Alaska, I was there for 5 years, and during my middle school years, played played hockey. Mm-hmm. So I learned to skate, and very thankful for that. And we had this great. We put an all-star team together in Alaska, and we took this all-star team to Canada to play a series of games. We played 12 games. We went 0 for 12. In that series, the closest game I think was 6-0 that we lost. We thought we were really good, and we went to Canada and just got destroyed. Yeah. It was definitely a humbling experience.
Well, they take it a little serious up there, huh, Nick?
A little bit, yeah. Well, just a little bit.
It's funny that you said that about being from Texas and having to play football, but I'm Canadian, and it's the same thing. You gotta play hockey, and you love it, so.
That's right.
Same thing, really. But moving international, as Matt and I are, hockey definitely doesn't fit the international school mold, and neither does football. There are a few schools, obviously, that have it, but not many. So really, our athletes, they're different. The international school athlete, and I know you've gone international to a couple of conferences.
Yes.
Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with the international world?
Yeah, so I wish I would have discovered the international world when I was coming out of college, because I know I would have taken that opportunity. I have a son who's a junior at Carolina, that other place 8 miles down the road. His siblings have wanted to put him up for adoption now because he's kind of wearing that other color blue now, but he wants to be a teacher and a coach, or he's trying to decide whether he wants to he works with the men's basketball program over at Carolina, and he's trying to decide, does he do it in college or does he do it in high school? And if he goes the high school route, I'm absolutely pushing and encouraging him to do the international route. I just think it's amazing. There's this whole world of international schools out there. And the first time I had the experience with that, I spoke at the conference that Kirby Boychuk helps coordinate there in Thailand. We did it in Bangkok, and it was just amazing being able to spend some time with athletic administrators from around the world, really helping them, just like I work with the ADs in high school athletics in America. Mm-hmm. You guys have the same types of issues, same things, helping develop your coaches, helping your kids have a good experience, trying to guide parents and help them do their part in helping kids have a good experience as well. Right. And so as a result of that, I've been over there a couple times and done a keynote for them, a couple keynotes, and done some workshops for them. And then as a result, have had the opportunity to go to Vietnam, and I've done some work at UNIS Hanoi there.
Okay.
I did some work in Jakarta at the Intercultural School, American Intercultural School in Jakarta. Did some work at the American School in London.
Oh, wow.
With their guys, and then American School in Bombay. Spoke at a conference there for teachers and coaches at that. But the other places I went to the schools themselves, and I spent some time with everyone. I do leadership training. I kind of focus on three things. I focus on leadership development. I focus on culture. There's a great saying that culture will eat strategy for lunch every day, and I think it'll eat it for breakfast and dinner and everything else. And so and then I focus on, obviously, performance and the psychology of performance. And I would argue that those principles apply to all aspects of life, whether you're an attorney, you're a physician, you are a corporate executive working with a team, or you're a high school coach, or you're a captain, or you're a parent of an athlete. Those things apply. And so when I go to schools, I really like to work with all the groups. I like to do work with the admin team, so doing leadership training and team dynamics with them, working with coaches on the art of coaching and their credibility as coaches, work with them on the psychology of coaching and how to help their athletes develop their mental skills. I work with teachers and try to help teachers with their helping them understand that the culture in their classroom is a reflection on them and their leadership in that situation. So how do they do that, work with kids, and then work with parents? So when I go, I get to spend time with everyone, and it's been a great experience, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback from doing that.
That's great. Do they? Because as an athlete and an AD, I see that all those things are related. Like you said, like how a teacher runs a class, it's like how a coach runs a practice, and there's all these similarities. But I find that a lot of teachers that don't coach or aren't athletes, they can't realize that. They think it's two totally different worlds. And I've had some conversations in that area. When you go work with teachers, do you feel that, or something? Hey, this guy's an athlete, he's a sports guy, get him out of here?
Yes. Absolutely. So I've learned to play up the fact that I'm a professor, right? Yeah. And I used to teach. I play up that piece of it. I don't talk about basketball with them, or I don't talk about, you got to know your audience, right? So and I know it probably feels like I'm doing a plug, but the last book I did was a fiction written for teachers, because I do have a passion for teaching, and it's a story about an experienced teacher who's mentoring a brand new teacher first year, and just kind of about the seasons of life that teachers go through, and really try to help them understand that the classroom, there is a culture within the classroom. And that they have an impact on that. We talk about relationships. Is it important? So, like, I'll do a debate with them, and one of the statements I'll make is, in order to be a great teacher, it's important that your students like you. Right. You choose a side of the room. Do you agree or disagree with that? And it's really interesting, because I can take that exact same statement and say, in order to be a great coach, it's important that your student athletes like you. Right. So I totally downplay the athletic piece of it and really up the ante on the teaching part of it, because I am a teacher, and I do think there's no question that coaches can learn some things from teachers, because we say it's our classroom all the time, right? And we say that, so we can learn from some of the best teachers, but I would also say teachers can absolutely learn from some of the better coaches. Right. And more often than not, it's more challenging to get teachers to buy into that than coaches to buy into the other piece of it. It's kind of the way it is. But I really try to focus in just on the teaching part. Try not to use athletic examples, and use real world examples from teaching, because the principles apply.
We're all in the same business, right? And it's we're all doing the same thing and working towards the same thing, which is making kids better and giving them a quality educational experience. So, it's hard, folks, I think, to kind of take those blinders down, or those barriers down, when they're so focused on what they do in a school or within the culture of the school. So finding strategies and helping to bring those barriers down a little bit, I think, could be really helpful for a school.
Yeah, I think so. And like the math department at a school, there's usually a head of the math department or a chair, whatever you might call it. And how is that person who was great in math and is very good gets elevated into a leadership position, and now you have to help your group of math teachers work effectively and be on the same page and all buy into the same thing. And that's a challenge. That's leadership. Just like if you were leading a team in a corporate situation, or we're talking about people, and how do we help people grow and develop and be the very best that they can be? And so, again, same kinds of things apply that you might apply to coaches, apply in the classroom, working with other adults as well.
And how do you differentiate with the levels? Because you're working with folks at quite high levels, right, in athletics, and then also in the corporate world. And then you might turn around the next day, you're working with a middle school science teacher, for example.
Right.
So what are some similarities or you might see between – I'm talking more like with athletes, more specifically with athletics.
Yeah.
What are some of the similarities you might see between a D1 athlete you work with and maybe an average high school kid?
Yeah. So again, I think that's one of the things I love about it is that I'm never bored because I am constantly challenged to try to wear different hats. And so I think that my experiences, I've had the chance to teach at every level from kindergarten all the way through PhD students. So I've had a chance I taught kindergarten or lower school science at an all-boys school in New York City. And holy cow, teaching lower school science to kindergartners or preschool or kindergartners, first graders, that's very different than teaching or coaching football to a high school kid on the football field, or basketball or track or whatever it is. But there are some basic things about relationships. I focus a lot on emotional equity, for instance. I think in any kind of relationship that you're in, you have to build what I call emotional equity. If you want people to follow you, if you want people to, in the classroom, you're teaching middle school science, or you're a middle school coach, and you're trying to get kids to buy in, you have to develop emotional equity with them. If you're an NBA coach and you're working with 3 or 4 guys who are making 10 times as much money as you are, and you're trying to get them to buy into what you're doing, you have to develop that emotional equity. And what I mean by that is they have to know you care about them. They have to know that you're in it for them. They have to know that you're coming from a good place and you've been able to take your ego and put it aside, and you're truly here to help them grow and develop. And if you can do that, then you're going to have a much better chance to get people to follow you, buy into what you're doing, be more willing to be a learner, a student, and develop as a result of what you're trying to do with them. If I'm working with a middle school athlete, specifically, say on confidence, then the terms that I'm going to use, the examples that I might use, the drills that I might have them do around self-talk, for instance, are going to be different than they are with one of our football players or a lacrosse player or a track athlete at Duke. Some of the terminology and some of the skills or the drills that I'm going to work with them on are going to be a little bit different. And I'm not saying that I'm just great at working with every single one of those levels, but I think having through the experiences that I've had, it's helped me be able to do that.
That's great. It's, they all have problems, just different size ones and different things, but when they're on the court, comes down to the same thing, I guess, right? Whether you're
right. And most people wouldn't think that professional athletes struggle with confidence, but are you kidding me? They absolutely struggle with confidence. It's just they're at a different level athletically. They're still humans, and they have mental health challenges. They struggle in pressure situations sometimes. It's amazing. They have some of the same challenges, but how we go about working around those and developing the skills to improve in those areas are different based on the level where you
I want to switch gears a little bit with what you work with. I'm just curious to know, do you work much with the idea or the realm of sportsmanship in your work with groups or with coaches, and if so, what do you cover with that?
Yeah. So one of the classes I teach a psychology of sport and performance class in the fall, and then in the spring I teach sport ethics. That's like an oxymoron. Sport ethics. Wow, we have a lot to talk about, as you can imagine. Right. And so, yes, I start at it from a big picture. I start with the captains and the coaches, and really trying to challenge them to think about the type of culture that's on their team is a direct reflection of them, and that they need to, and their leadership, and they need to be very deliberate and conscious about what type of culture they want to create and what do they want their brand to be. With other teams in the league, with other teams within the school, how do you want to be represented? How do you want people to view you? Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, says your leadership brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And I think it's the same thing with your team identity, how you're viewed in the school, how you're viewed with other teams that you're going to compete against. And I really try to challenge them to think about, how do you want to be viewed? And they'll always say sportsmanship is important, that we do things the right way. So, okay, so what are we going to do to make sure that we're doing that? And how do we lead by that way? So how do we interact with officials? We got to lead in that way. That's the first thing that we have to do, because if we're not modeling it, they're watching us and they're going to learn what's okay and what's not okay. So we have some real conversations about what that looks like. I might not always, sometimes I'll refer to it as sportsmanship, but I also find that sometimes that turns people off, like sportsmanship, that award goes to the teams that are not very good, or, sportsmanship is overused. So I really try to look at it more like, how are we going to treat each other? How are we going to treat our opponents? How are we going to interact with each other? I spent a lot of time around, Donna Hicks wrote a great book about leading with dignity, and I use a lot of her stuff in my work around the difference between respect and dignity. And we might lose respect for someone, but everyone still deserves to be treated with dignity, even our opponents, even our people that we really struggle with. So as a team, how can we treat each other with dignity? The language that we use with each other, how we interact with each other. And then same thing with our opponents, that we might not respect them, we might struggle with them. Maybe they don't display great sportsmanship or great ethic in what they're doing, but we're still going to treat them with dignity. That's kind of how we do things around here.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that doesn't matter what level, what youth 5-year-old soccer, what does all the way up.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Yes,
really
that could also be a required class for everyone who goes to an athletic event. Because I think the fans and are sometimes the worst ones, right?
Well, and that, speaking of that, I talk to parents, and I think most parents have their hearts in the right place. And I assumed that when I went to international schools that it would be totally different. But what I find is that there's a lot of the same challenges. I think publicly, it seems like international school parents, for the most part, are pretty good. They're not the ones yelling and screaming at their kids and the officials like we do here in the U.S., where it's crazy. I tell parents in the U.S., if your spouse or significant other is too embarrassed to sit by you during a competition, that might be an indication that you've lost perspective, right? That people that love you the most can't even sit next to you because of the way you behave in the stand. And because when I ask parents, what are the lessons you want your kids to learn from sport, they'll all say sportsmanship. Well, are you modeling sportsmanship in the way you personally interact with officials during competition?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, is it a mentality like it's an automatic way you should function when you go to be a spectator?
Yes.
To be a sport, or just to yell at the refs and not be there in a supportive way. It's like it's part of the experience, I guess. Maybe that's their mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
And certainly, if you've paid admission to go somewhere, or to go to a college event or a professional event, that kind of, when you pay, that's kind of your license to do that. And unfortunately, they've taken that model and now applied it to middle school and upper school sports, high school sports, and it's not. And I challenge, sometimes family members of the coach can't sit on the same side or the home side because of the way people talk about the coach during competitions.
Right.
We're talking high school sports here.
Yeah.
Like, if you go to a pro event and you're talking bad about the coach, you're probably not sitting in the up in the suite with the coach's wife or the coach's spouse. Because if you are, I guarantee you're not bashing the coach. So if you want your kid to learn sportsmanship, we have to be the ones to model it. We have to take some ownership of that. Yeah. And so I really try to challenge parents to, teamwork is one that's really important for parents. And they all say, yeah, teamwork is important. I want my kids to learn teamwork. And I would argue we kind of want everybody else's kid to learn teamwork. We struggle helping our own kid learn that, because if our kid's on the bench, we struggle with that. Right. Me included. And one guy said his son was playing basketball. He said, look, Greg, I'm all about teamwork. As long as the 4 best kids and my kids out there playing, teamwork sounds great to me. Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of how most people are, right? Yeah. So if your son or daughter's on the bench and they're not playing in the position that you want them to play or getting the playing time that you want, and you see that she's pouting in volleyball, after it's over, do you have a conversation with your daughter about what it means to be a great teammate even when she's not getting to play? Or do we talk to the coach about why my daughter's not playing? Yeah. See, because if teamwork is important, we got to have some of those discussions around, look, it's not always going to go our way, but when we're over there, we got to support our teammates.
Right.
Yep.
It's tough. It's a tough thing for
it's really challenging.
Youth, high school student, and
it's really challenging. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, let's take a quick ad break, and we'll come right back. If your school is in the market for bespoke sportswear, look no further than Kukri Sports. Kukri has evolved over the last 20 years from a bespoke sportswear manufacturer into a true sportswear partner, firmly believing in the value of sport at all levels. Start your journey today. Email the team at contact@kukrisports.com.
Coach Evaluator is the premier coach evaluation software for schools and athletic organizations and preferred coach evaluation solution of the NIAAA and the Positive Coaching Alliance. The system is completely customizable with an always growing evaluation template library for athletic directors to reference. There are not only evaluations for ADs to use, but also self-evaluations and parent-player evaluations of coaches. Learn more about digitizing and simplifying your coach evaluation process by visiting www.coachevaluator.com.
Well, we're lucky enough not just to have you with us right now, but you're also going to do a couple sessions at our summer conference series. Really looking forward to. Both of them are going to be at 2:00 my time, Vienna time, July 8th and 22nd. And we'd just like to ask you a little bit about those sessions right now, and maybe you can give a bit of a preview for us.
Yeah. So one of them is really going to be, whether you're an athletic administrator or you are a coach or whoever you are in a leadership position, we're going to talk about credibility. And I think as a coach, as a leader, as a teacher, as an administrator, you have a credibility account. And your credibility is like a bank account, and you're either making deposits into that or you're making withdrawals from that. And so as a leader, so given the context, given the situation that you're in, how do you establish that credibility? Mm-hmm. And what are ways that you lose that credibility that we want to be able to understand? And then how do we what do we need to do to maintain that? What do we do to make sure that we're doing that? So we'll talk a little bit about how we go through different seasons of our careers. We go from surviving and keeping our head above water to being in that success mode where it's about me and taking a lot of credit for things and using a lot of I statements and me and my statements, and until we get to that significant stage at some point where we're being able to take our ego aside and put it in whatever's best for them. That's what I'm going to do. And that servant leadership piece, that's where I ultimately get to. And then there's a couple other stages as we start to lose our passion for what we're doing. I think our credibility might be undermined. Right. How we challenge athletes, how we challenge other people to be excellent without undermining their confidence and undermining our credibility in the process is an art, and not everyone's great at that. So I want to try to give people some ideas about how do we have high standards, how do we hold them accountable and still not undermine their confidence, undermine our credibility as somebody who is trying to get them to follow. Right. And then the other piece is going to be about developing mindset and developing, whether that's an athlete or you're working with athletes or you're working with someone else. How do we develop mindset around and helping use our mind as an asset rather than a liability, and really try to give some practical ideas around dealing with adversity. Look, it's easy to be mentally tough and have a great attitude and everything's going your way, but what about when the stuff hits the fan and things aren't going well? How do we handle that? How do we handle it not getting the playing time? How do we handle it when we're struggling individually? We'll talk about pressure and how to embrace pressure and how to help your athletes help other individuals learn to interpret pressure differently and do things differently in those situations. And I think sometimes coaches and leaders contribute to that unnecessarily. I'm going to try to give them some ideas about how to do with that. And then talk a little bit about confidence and how I don't think confidence is a gift that you can just bestow on others, but boy, we can have a big influence on that. So how can we help them develop their confidence as individuals? So those are some of the things that we'll talk about in that second.
That's great. And I think obviously mental toughness and confidence, as you said, it doesn't matter, where you are. It's a thing. It's an issue. And I find it especially hard coaching internationally because we don't have, regular season games really with fans, or, maybe they're just all friendlies, or it's not a big deal. Sometimes you don't even keep score. And then you fly to a conference and, you've paid a bit of money and everybody's there. There's 12 teams maybe. And now it's for everything, so you've had no pressure situation, maybe the whole season, maybe your whole career, because we're getting, people playing new sports and things. And then boom, there you are. And the coach is heightened, the officials are heightened, there's people watching. So it's really from 0 to 100. And
it's lighting in a bottle.
Yeah, right. And that's very unique, but what a great, and I haven't had a chance to witness that. I hope I get to someday, but to me, that's the epitome of what a pressure situation is like. And as a coach, how do you practice for that? It's hard to practice. It's hard to replicate for that, but you can do some things going into that to help relieve some of that. And I want to give them some ideas about how to do that. And number one, how you are acting is going to be a huge thing. Do they see differences in you? If you're uptight, they're going to be uptight. And how do you approach it, and the language that you use and how you talk about it is going to go a long way in helping them just focus on how we play and just doing that. Because I would argue the teams that do well in those situations aren't the ones that do something spectacular or feel like that to be special. They're the ones that just do their thing and just trust that and relax and go play. Yeah. They're the ones that end up doing better. So how can we get into that place?
Yeah. Right. Those are all things that are transferable to the big game of life too.
Yes,
well, right?
Absolutely.
So,
no doubt about it.
Stuff.
And that's one of the things I try to get. It's hard for teenagers, but really trying to help them understand that, like for kids, when we talk about confidence and pressure and we talk about adversity and those things, they kind of have three buckets in their life. They have their extracurricular, they have their social, and then they have their academic piece. It absolutely applies to all three of those buckets. And if we're talking about your confidence tank, so to speak, and your confidence tank is full in your athletic piece, but socially it's here, and academically it's here, and it fluctuates. What are we doing to fill those buckets? What are we doing to do that? And for kids, and coaches need to understand that kids might have a great confidence in one area, but they might be struggling in another area. And so we have to demonstrate some empathy there and some compassion and understand that. So it absolutely, to your point, Matt, it applies to every aspect of our life.
Wow. Great. All right. Well, Greg, thanks for taking the time. We want to let you get back to the beach because I know you're on holiday right now.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. I again love what you guys are doing. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to spend time with you.
We appreciate you taking time out of your holiday. That's fantastic.
Yeah, great. All right.
Hopefully, maybe one day we'll get you to come over here to Central Europe and have a conference with us
Love
here in CISA.
Yeah, I love that.
That'd be great.
Well, there is a connection, because we were saying the one director that you got to know in Thailand, I believe, right, is going to be the new director in Budapest next year.
Oh, really?
Brett Penny.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. So, okay. Yeah, very cool. Brett is a great guy. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. I went to his. I can't believe forgot. I went to his school too and spent a lot of time there in Thailand too. So that's another school that I got a chance to spend time with.
Great.
Yeah, small world.
Small world. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. July.
We'll connect again before then about connecting and all that. And
yeah, I'll definitely be in touch. I'll send you a link and.
Okay.
We'll be all ready.
Sounds great. All right.
Okay.
Take care, guys. Have a great rest of your week.
Right. See you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Until next week, this has been another episode of the Globetrottin ADs.